And I think it's our job in the movement to help them realize that ending the life of their child is only going to compound the crisis that they're in.
Correct.
It's only going to dig them deeper into that hole because they're going to carry that shame and regret with them for their entire lives.
Our special guest is Prudence Robertson. So you saw what I did there, right? Okay. So anyway, she has been a pro-lifer her entire life. She is now the host of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. She was the spokeswoman for the Susan B. Anthony list, and she got her start praying in front of abortion clinics in Maryland with her wonderful family. And she's also a Steubenville graduate. So Prudence, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Father Leo. It's an honor to be here. I'm a big fan. I
my.
told Grady before, my parents used to watch your cooking shows all the time when I was growing up. So, this is really coming full circle for me.
So they used to watch it, so they don't watch it anymore?
Oh, they still do.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
They've been stands for a long time.
Sundays at 4:30 Eastern. No, it's kind of interesting to have another EWTN personality. And honestly, we need to do more collaboration amongst all the people there. And you're in the Washington studios, and your show is weekly, and it's all about being pro-life. So I kind of want to get a working definition of what it means to be pro-life for you, because you've been one all your life.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a huge question to answer, but I guess I'll kind of,
let's go.
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning and I'll give you the fast version. But, I was raised to be pro-life ever since I was young. We had conversations about the issue of abortion, mainly because I have a sister who is adopted. My sister, Mia, she's 23 days younger than me. So we were really raised like twins, but we don't look like twins at all because she's from Vietnam.
Oh.
So when I was 6 months old, she came to us. And so as long as I can remember, I've understood what adoption is. And I've understood that the alternative to adoption, oftentimes, tragically, is abortion. And so the reality of what abortion is was very real to me from a very young age. And my parents were great at helping us understand what adoption was and how amazing it was that Mia was a part of our family. And, she wasn't any less their daughter because she was adopted. They were honest with us about what that alternative could have been. Mia might not be here if it wasn't for the beauty of adoption. And, with that, they also took us to abortion clinics where we would pray for these unborn children as their mothers were going into the clinic. It was actually Dr. Leroy Carhart's Germantown, Maryland abortion clinic where I first prayed. And he actually just passed away a couple of weeks ago at I think he was almost 90. But up until the last moment, he was performing abortions whenever he could. And so, we pray for him, we pray for his conversion and for, all of the women that walked into his clinics. But yeah, so kind of going back to my start, that's where I got my start, praying for his conversion, and just for the conversion of abortionists in general and just increased understanding about the reality of abortion. And I carried that throughout my life. For a while, I thought that I wanted to work in politics and focus on lots of different issues. And obviously, abortion is not the only pro-life issue, So that's one thing that we talk about on Pro-Life Weekly a lot is that you can be involved in the pro-life movement. You can be actively pro-life.
People definitely think that being pro-life is just simply being anti-abortion.
Right.
Which it is.
Yes.
But it's so much more.
So much more. I mean, last week we did an episode focused on euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide, like how all of that is on the rise. So really, this is like a cliche thing that people say all the time, but like from womb to tomb, like we're pro-life. And we're always looking to value the humanity of the unborn child, help people realize the humanity of the unborn child, but also recognize the dignity of all human people.
I think one of the biggest struggles right now in the pro-life industry is that it has been placed in the realm of politics. And it hasn't, at one point it was a moral issue.
Absolutely.
It was something for churches to handle.
Right.
Now it's politicians being the ultimate voice for it all. I mean, what do you say to that? I mean, besides things like, shut up, it's not for you to decide.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, you're getting to an important point. There's really been an evolution in the pro-life movement. You're right. It used to just be a moral issue and a simple question, is this a life or not? not to get into the legal weeds too much, but when Roe versus Wade came along, you had this idea of incrementalism introduced, where people started deciding whether or not a child was worth saving based on how old they were when they were growing in the womb. Roe versus Wade set up this incrementalist mentality that really dehumanized these children and really just started deconstructing that ultimate question of, is this a life or not? People began to set a limit based on just time, whether this was a child or not, which is completely absurd. But that's the norm now. And you have states passing laws to limit abortion at different times. Some have 6-week bans, some have total bans, some have 20-week bans. And it's unfortunate that that's the debate that we're having now.
Is there wiggle room here? Because look, it would be great if there was a complete ban, but are you happy when there's at least a ban up to, 6 months or something like that?
Right.
I mean, like as a real pro-lifer, do you see that as a victory that yes, they're going to at least stop abortions if it's 6 months into the pregnancy? Because there would be some people say, no, you got to keep fighting. I mean, where should we stand as Catholics?
Absolutely. Obviously, on Pro-Life Weekly and as Catholics, we're praying for a complete end of abortion. That's our end goal, right? But, Roe versus Wade didn't do that. Are we going to say that overturning Roe versus Wade wasn't a victory? Of course it was a victory. It left it up to the states to decide whether or not children should be protected in their states. Something that's important to point out here is, obviously, we would love if every state would pass a total ban on abortion. But either half or over half of states at this point, I'm not sure of the most recent count, have banned abortion at either 12 or 6 weeks. And that's so early in pregnancy that you're essentially eliminating all abortions in those states. And that's
a good thing.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Again, it's not the best, it's not the end goal. But of course, it's a huge victory if babies are being saved as early as their hearts are beating. Sure. As early as their heart. I mean, sometimes heartbeats are detected at 3 or 4 weeks gestation. That's another thing that a lot of people don't talk about. Sometimes they say it's 6 or 8 weeks, but my hairdresser told me once, I heard my baby's heart beating when she was 3 weeks old. Like, it's crazy. And I think that's a rare case, an earlier case than most. But if you have a heartbeat law on the books, you're essentially banning abortion in that state.
Who's going to argue with your hairdresser?
Right.
I mean, she could make your hair look terrible. So just agree with her. But at the same time, her experience as a woman and as a mother, and I know that's a big topic on pro-life, is like, who is a woman and who can be a mom?
Right.
It's embarrassing where we've come to these days. Have you just seen how people have gone truly psychotic in this industry of abortion? People
aren't living in reality. And there are so many people who are, just letting the complacency kind of set in when it comes to this issue too. I mean, abortion is the destruction of an innocent human life.
Yeah.
A lot of people, even within our movement, aren't acting like that's the fight that we're fighting anymore. And we really need to step up.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, now
you just dropped a big old, there are people in the movement who are just not really pro-lifers.
Well, there are a lot of fantastic people in our movement. But I think you hit something on the head when you talked about how this has become such a political issue. This is a moral issue first and foremost. And at EWTN, we have the freedom to talk about this as a moral issue. We can say that because of our Catholic belief, we believe that these children, deserve the right to live based on their inherent right to life. But people are thinking about this politically too much, and I think it's detrimental when we don't treat this issue with the gravity that it has. I mean, we did an episode not that long ago on the idea of making birth free. Some people in the pro-life movement are not totally in favor of that because they don't think it's the most effective way to save lives.
Explain this to me.
So
making birth free.
So
I mean, just like not having hospitals charge.
Right. So
'Cause it's expensive.
we really dove into how much it costs for a mom to give birth.
How much?
Well, it ranges, but sometimes it can be upwards of $3,000, $4,000.
Wow.
If for some reason you have to pay out of pocket, your insurance doesn't cover it, it can be very expensive. And the reason we talked about that on the show is because, we're talking about how the pro-life movement needs to step up, right? We need to figure out what the next step is now that Roe versus Wade is overturned. We need to make it easier for couples to get married and choose to have families. That's really the cultural issue that we need to fight the most right now. Is
Poland did, Hungary
Right,
did, and look at those countries are thriving.
Yeah, exactly. And, our birth rate is below replacement level.
Yeah.
It has been since the 1980s or something, 1970s. It's embarrassing. And, most couples used to be having 3 or 4 kids. Now they're having 1 or no kids at all. So we need to figure out why that is. We need to change things, not just in the realm of politics, but in the healthcare realm, even within the realm of the church. We need to be the ones leading this fight.
Now, some people will say, but you're just an extremist. You pray in front of abortion clinics. You're one of those extreme Christians. Mm-hmm. So, how do you respond to that? Because you kind of don't look extreme. You look like a nice person.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
You're welcome.
Obviously, that's what they're going to label us as. But,
what do you say to them?
Well, look at the people who are picketing outside of Supreme Court justices' homes, who have attacked over hundreds of churches and pregnancy care centers that are literally just trying to hand out diapers to moms and give moms pregnancy tests and help them.
I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but when you look at the pro-abortion, militant pro-abortion, they don't only look extreme, they look deranged. And
angry.
I don't even want to say this in a critical way, but they're literally screaming at old ladies just praying in front of a clinic.
One woman even got shot in, I think it was Missouri. I can't remember what state, but she was peacefully door knocking, canvassing for a pro-life candidate. And she got shot by one of these people, and, when they frame us as the extremists, you have to look at what the other side has done here. You have to look at.
It is a semantics battle too.
Yeah.
Where do you think the Catholic Church needs to learn if we're going to make any headway or any taking any ground with the semantics of it all? I'm just going to jump into these questions that people ask, and they'll say, it's just a cluster of cells. And you say?
At 12 weeks, a baby can hiccup, and you can hear them coughing.
Oh, it's adorable.
And when you look at them, you can see them opening and closing their fists.
But what about at 5 weeks? It's still a cluster. It's just like a blob.
At 5 or 6 weeks, I hope I'm getting the statistics right. Because there's all these different stages. The Charlotte Lozier Institute actually has done some great research on this. Mm-hmm. They have a website called Voyage of Life, and you can track the development of a baby in the womb. And I believe at 5 or 6 weeks, they've already had tons of blood pumping through their veins. I can't remember what the exact number is, but you can see these signs of life.
Sure.
As early as 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Well, even a cluster of cells is life.
Yeah.
If they found a drop of water on Mars, they would protect it.
Sure.
So
right.
I don't care if it looks like a baby or not, it's still life.
Exactly.
And the potential is there. And so what if you say to people, when they just immediately jump to this extreme example, what about rape and incest?
Well, to start, they're really fighting on kind of the edges of the battlefield when they bring that up, because that's a very small percentage of abortions are due to rape and incest. But again, we're talking about a human life. And obviously, it's a tragedy if a young girl, especially a very young girl, is raped. But, that doesn't change the importance of the sacred dignity of that life inside of her.
Sure.
And people in the abortion, movement, people working for Planned Parenthood, they just ignore the severe damage and wounds that abortion causes.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
like one pain and you're compounding a murder.
We have to be calling them out for that.
Sure.
You know, they're giving women abortion pills and sending them home to perform their own abortions in their college dorm rooms, in their homes.
You know, this idea of rape and incest, granted, it is a small amount of people who experience that, but the quality of those women, they show their strength when they can correct something evil by doing something good. Hope you're enjoying this conversation and this episode, and we definitely can use your support by simply encouraging family and friends to subscribe, and also to make sure you support us on Patreon. We have different levels and different tiers that give you greater opportunities so that you can dish out faith, culture, and commentary. You can learn more at patreon.com/The Father Leo Show. And now, back to our conversation.
And I think it's our job in the movement to help them realize that ending the life of their child is only going to compound the crisis that they're in.
Correct.
It's only going to dig them deeper into that hole, because they're going to carry that shame and regret with them for their entire lives.
For me, I always like to go back and say, and that's why the Catholic Church wants to protect sexuality and marriage, where you don't have to worry about these things. Rape and incest is a product of the pro-abortion mentality,
Right.
which we're fighting against constantly.
Right.
And so what if people say it's just, you know, God, it's so annoying to hear, my body, my choice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this goes back to the impact of the sexual revolution on our culture today. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head when you talk about, you know, it's just assumed that, you know, I can do whatever I want. I can live my life with complete autonomy and not be held responsible for the decisions that I make. I mean, what kind of society is that? It's just, we've crumbled
How
as
do
a society.
people, society has just crumbled. I mean, I don't want to sound dystopian, but it just feels like
It's hard for me not to sound dystopian these days. Honest, I have to like pull myself out of the.
it can be depressing.
It can be.
I mean, where honestly, people are not only protecting the right to kill a baby after a botched abortion and this baby is alive and they'll just simply let it die,
Right.
but they also celebrate it. I mean, there's almost real evil here. In your work, do you see evil?
Oh, I mean, the abortion movement is rooted in
demonic.
evil. It's demonic. And it's, you know, it's definitely a challenge and a call to holiness that I hope I'm achieving, to host a show like Pro-Life Weekly, because you have to shroud yourself in prayer. I mean, you have to be running to the sacraments constantly, because, I mean, I literally see how it affects my work when I'm not centering myself in the Lord, centering myself in my faith, because the devil does not want the work that we are doing at EWTN to continue and to thrive.
I know that.
He doesn't want the truth to be shared about the reality of abortion.
Or she. I like to use inclusive language when I talk about the devil.
Of course.
That's a clear thing for me. You know, your show is on weekly, and obviously it requires prep. But what do you do the rest of the week?
Well, you know, it's funny. My show is weekly, but it kind of takes the whole week to plan what we're going to discuss.
Absolutely.
So we do that, but we also like to go out in the field and kind of tape stories for, you know, future episodes and things like that. I'm actually excited this coming week to go to North Dakota. We'll be visiting a group of folks who run a maternity home out in North Dakota, where they minister to young girls who find themselves pregnant, a lot of girls in high school, early in college, and they focus on placing those children for adoption. So that's just an example of, you know, a trip that we would go out on a Thursday and a Friday when our taping is done on Wednesdays. I love to go onto Capitol Hill and just kind of see what the members are doing on our issue and other life issues. I'll hang out with Eric Rosales, our EWTN News Nightly correspondent, and talk to senators, members of Congress about the legislation they're putting forward on the life issue, on the transgender marriage issues.
Not everyone can have a weekly show and pray in front of an abortion clinic. So what can they do? What do people do in order to be pro-life without, obviously we should all be invested, but they all have jobs. They all have like other things they've got to take care of.
Of course.
So what do you recommend that we can be doing to be pro-life, even if they're not working in the pro-life movement?
This is probably the most important question that could be asked right now.
Wow.
Especially, so
Glad I
great job,
asked.
Father Leo.
Guys hear that?
Especially in this post-Roe world.
Yeah.
This issue is in everybody's backyard. Whether you realize it or not, this debate is playing out in communities all across the country. And I firmly believe that it's important to discern what your unique role is within the broader pro-life movement. Maybe you're called right now, if you're a young couple and you have a few kids, to invest in those children as much as you can. Create a strong family, build a strong family unit, because that is going to equip your children and you to go out into the world and speak the truth about issues like abortion and other issues that are destroying our culture today.
Why don't you think more people are doing it? It's a strange thing, but we all talk about wanting to respect life, and they'll say, all you care about is abortion. You don't care about the kids at the border. You don't care about death row. You don't care about the homeless on the streets.
I think I'm glad you asked this too, because when I was putting together,
I'm like batting 1,000 here with
you're killing it. When I was doing research on this episode about making birth free, I looked into that. Why aren't couples having kids? Some of them said it was because of the cost of raising a family. Some of them said it's because they're focused on their career instead of starting a family. But a large majority of people actually say, and this is sad, they just want to maintain their independence and their autonomy.
Yeah.
And
Like a kid is a burden somehow.
right. And that's absolutely how kids are viewed in the culture today widely, I think, is that they're a burden.
They are. There is challenge. I'm not going to deny that. When I go into families' homes and they've got a bunch of kids and they're all screaming and having to change diapers and this one hit the other. And I'm like, I've got my own bathroom.
It's not always a peaceful life, that's for sure.
It's certainly not. But
we're called to greatness.
Yeah.
And we're called to, especially as Catholics, recognize that life's not easy and we're not made for this world. We're not just supposed to coast through it. We're supposed to, be the best versions of ourselves, strive to, live to the fullest of our potential. And why would that not include planning for the future of our nation, for our culture, for our church, for our world? We have to be, focused on the legacy that we're going to set too. What kind of legacy are these people who are, claiming their independence going to leave behind? Maybe they have a great job now and they're making lots of money and they have a nice house and a Tesla, but that's all fleeting, It's investing in your family and the legacy that you will leave behind you. That's going to enrich your life. And Harrison Bucker actually talked about this a few days ago. I don't know if you saw on Instagram, but he was spitting some fire at I think it was his alma mater. He gave the commencement speech there, and he talked all about how, he just won 2 Super Bowls. He has 2 Super Bowl rings, but the most important ring that he'll ever wear is his wedding ring. And where he finds his joy and his fulfillment is in his wife and his family. And that's where his confidence comes from. Like, what a better testimony than that? What a better witness.
you grew up in a family that was pretty Catholic.
Yes.
Lucky you.
I'm very blessed.
Yeah. And they had you going to abortion clinics and praying when you were how old?
I think middle school is when we started.
Now, some people would say that's not a good thing for parents to do. They're holding up signs of like mutilated babies, and it could be considered, again, just a little too much for a child's development.
Sure.
Are you developmentally now unhinged?
I don't know. What do you think, Father Leo?
I don't know. I'm not your
assessment?
hairdresser, so I can't. I don't really have a full assessment here. But that, I think that is a true critique. When
And it's a fair one. I think it's a very fair critique. There were definitely moments in my young life, and I don't fault my parents for this at all, but those images struck me. There were moments when I didn't want to look at them. I would look away as a young child. They repulsed me. But again, like, that's the reality of what we're fighting.
yeah.
And
Well, people say the same thing, like they see the carnage of an animal maltreated, and then it shows up on your dinner table, and that's why kids are now vegans.
Right. But yeah, you're exactly right. And I think I can understand why some parents wouldn't want to expose their children to that. And I actually have kind of changed my thinking on this as I've grown older. And I do think sometimes having those images just like out on the street where a kid driving by in a car could see them might not be the most prudent, wise thing to do.
Really?
But I think there is a place for those images, when we have the March for Life and people come in and they're showing images like that, surrounded by, people who understand the reality of abortion. But then also grown adults who need to be woken up to the reality of this issue. I think those images change their hearts and minds at times.
Let's talk about the March for Life.
Yes.
Because it's a different machine, beast, gift now.
Absolutely.
I mean, prior to the Dobbs case, it was really a fight. Now it feels like a little bit of a celebration.
100%.
But
Yeah.
it needs to grow.
And it is growing, which is exciting. They have the March for Life organization has really expanded their state outreach. So I've had the opportunity to travel to a couple of their state marches for life over the past few months. Most recently, I was in Ohio back in October of last year. They're doing them everywhere. I mean, I think they've had 6 or 7 so far this year and more to come. And they're focused on these state legislatures now, as they should be.
As they should have been.
That's true.
Because everyone just focuses on the federal policies. And I'm like, no, get involved in your local city council, your local school boards. I mean, I studied politics and it was always frustrating to see everyone was concerned about the presidency. I'm like, no, state senators, your city council people.
That's where the change really happens.
That's exactly it.
Absolutely.
And it's frustrating because you see people's energies misplaced.
Yeah.
We as a citizen can't affect what happens nationally, but we can affect what happens in your neighborhood.
Yeah, their energy is focused on the swamp, right? Where nothing is getting done and, there's gridlock all the time. But I mean...
Are you talking about the traffic?
Yes.
I mean, that is a place where, honestly, I need holy water in DC traffic.
Yeah, road rage is a real thing that I have to pray against every day.
Okay, so one of the things that I'd like to ask you about, especially with your work, is like saving babies' lives. It sounds so noble.
Thank you.
And it is noble. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but this is a job for you too. So it's a mission, but it's also a job. Not everyone can do it. What motivates you, truly motivates you, wakes you up in the morning and gets you excited to get out of bed? And
yeah, it's a job. You're right. It's a job and it's not always easy. Obviously I'm motivated by the hearts and minds that I could be changing, the lives I could be saving. But I think more importantly, what's motivating me recently is looking at all of the other media outlets that exist out there and seeing the lies that they are spreading and recognizing that people are so confused about what's actually going on in the world today and how much needs to be fixed and how much our culture is broken because so many in the media, which everyone is constantly consuming on Twitter, through their phones, they're just hiding all of the things that need to change. And really working for EWTN and being in a place where we can speak the truth is what motivates me to get out of bed every day and do this job, because we are an important part of a cultural change that is happening. It's on the rise. People are waking up. And
I am seeing that. I'm seeing a lot more non-Catholic churches, because at one point the torch was held by the Catholic Church. It always has been. But I see a lot of other non-denominational Christians stepping up for life. And it's good to see that.
It is. And I do think people are waking up to the reality of the moment that we're in our nation and and even in the world. I mean, EWTN, we're a global network. And
Sure.
so we, we're so blessed to be those beacons of light in specifically within EWTN News, to be a beacon of light and really a career path or a community that's just like very shrouded
How
in dark.
did you get? I mean, were they? Did you like, hey, I want to kind of do a show?
This is a crazy story. So in my work at Susan B. Anthony List, I often came on Pro-Life Weekly as a guest.
Yeah.
And I really just became besties with Catherine Hadro.
Sure.
She really became a mentor and a great friend of mine. And she was the foundress of the founding host of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. She hosted it for about 5 years. And when she decided that it was time for her to move on to the next thing, it was kind of her job to find someone to replace her. And I'll never forget, she texted me one day and she said, hey, I need to chat with you about something. Give me a call when you can. And I don't know how or why I thought this, but I had a feeling she was leaving Pro-Life Weekly. And then a little bit later in the day, I was like, I wonder why she's calling me. And then we just chatted on the phone and she said, hey, we need a new host for Pro-Life Weekly. And I think you would do a great job.
That's awesome.
And next thing you know, I was going in, I was, getting to meet everybody. And what was great about that transition is because I was very familiar with the network in my role at SBA List, I already knew the crew. I was familiar with the way EWTN worked. And so it was really just a fun transition.
Nice. A couple speed round questions for you here.
Love it.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Here we go. Number one.
Oh gosh. I hope I'm fast enough.
If you were not doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
Traveling everywhere, all the time.
You mean my show?
Yes. Can I come with you? Where are you going next?
Oh gosh, we're going to have to get rid of one of my team members. He's having a seizure as I speak because he likes traveling too much. So, and we all know who that is.
I think we do.
So traveling, that would be a big thing for you?
Yeah, I'm a huge traveler. And thankfully I get to do some of that for my job domestically, but I really love Europe.
If you could cook for anyone, who would that be and what would you cook?
I would cook for my boyfriend, Dominic, and I would probably cook him something Italian. And it would involve pasta and a delicious creamy sauce. Maybe you can share a recipe with me.
Okay. Baby favorite name. Your favorite baby name. God, baby favorite. Language, Latin. So your favorite baby name.
Well, as a young woman, I have a note on my phone of like 10. Bernadette Mary.
Bernadette Mary.
Is a great name. Also Genevieve is a good one too. So.
Okay. How about boys?
Oh gosh. I love the biblical boy names. Anthony. That's not biblical, but
No. Yeah, he's biblical enough. Yeah.
I like Anthony. Tony.
Okay. Tony.
Yeah.
Hey, Tony.
Tony.
And if you can just share, you don't have to, but if there was a challenge, maybe even a failure that you experienced, but you learned from it, what was that? You've had no failures.
Gosh, this is like let's see. I think I would say that discipline is an important thing in life. And there have been times in my life where I've thought, and this is kind of a broad generic thing, but like if I had been more disciplined in this thing, what would my life look like today? You know? And it can be a little thing or a small thing. But yeah, just kind of pondering that. And I guess if you're asking, what the challenge would be to someone listening right now, like think about discipline and where, it would be helpful to be disciplined in your life and think about how really just applying that discipline could change your life.
Sure. Now you've worked with a lot of priests, a lot of clergy, because that's the nature of the pro-life movement.
Yes.
But if you could ask a priest any question that you've never had a chance to ask,
oh my God,
what would that be? Not that I would answer. I just want to hear the question.
Are dogs in heaven?
And the answer is no.
Why?
They're in doggy heaven. They're not in people heaven because of the soul, the quality of soul.
The reason I ask, and this is like a debate among my friends, so I need to know your answer, Father, because I need to give them a concrete answer so we can shut down this debate.
Sure.
like there were dogs in Eden, right?
Yeah. Which dogs? Like, who's the moral judge for the dog? Like, if there was a bad dog.
Like God created them.
Yeah.
So is it not him?
No. The dogs are not made in God's image and likeness. So the
True.
only souls that are made in God's image and likeness, they're creatures that God created, and God loves them all. But as far as going to heaven is concerned, no, because who's going to clean up their mess? I'm kidding. But, but it really does speak to the different souls between a baby soul, a dog's soul, a cat's soul, a fish's soul. So if we kind of go down the line, it's so interesting that there'll be people who will fight for a dog to stay alive, but they couldn't care less about a baby.
Sure.
And why? Well, there's a difference in the soul.
Yeah. Well, is there a doggy heaven? Sorry, this is a speed round that's probably getting too long.
Doggy heaven, sure, why not? If that's what floats your boat and makes you happy about heaven, you go for it. Now, I mean, it doesn't take away the fact that God loves all creatures, but heaven is really a place for those made in God's image and likeness, where you could experience a unity in him. So anyway, but I've got a couple more questions for you.
I love it.
And it's my show.
We can go all night.
Exactly. No, so I do have to ask, like, what's next for you? Because, I mean, I know you're going to be doing some more work in the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
You've already experienced a little evolution.
Absolutely.
What's next for you and for maybe the movement?
I love what I'm doing now, reporting on this issue. I think going from working for an advocacy organization in the pro-life movement to then reporting on it has been, huge. I've experienced huge growth and I've learned so much. Because we need to be talking about this issue from all sides, right? We need to be relating to as many people as possible, reaching as many people as we can. So my next phase is to just honestly keep doing what I'm doing, keep learning. I love being at EWTN and I love the mission. I love, the legacy that Mother Angelica has left behind for us. And so I don't see myself going anywhere anytime soon. And as for the movement, I think we really do just need to keep focusing on how we can encourage young people, especially, to carry on the torch of actualizing a pro-family, pro-life culture. Because if we don't, what is there going to be left to fight for?
Sure.
So in whatever you're doing right now in your life, whatever way that you can impact that, do it.
And where can people learn more about you, your work, and even the pro-life movement?
You can follow me on Twitter at Prudence Pulse. You can go to prolifeweekly.com to learn more about the show. And we also post our episodes on YouTube every week. So if you just YouTube search EWTN Pro-life Weekly, you'll see all of our episodes and all our clips. That's pretty much it.
And for those who are watching, is there a message that you want them to walk away with or a question to think about?
Don't be afraid to speak about what you believe boldly, and don't let the majority of people who are complacent today deter you from being true to yourself and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard and you'll be ostracized for it, because you will be.
Well, Prudence, thank you for joining us. It's really been a pleasure to hear this. I know it's a conversation that we need to have regularly because life can get busy, but if you don't have life, then what's the point of the busy?
Right.
So thanks for that. And I hope you all were able to get something out of this, and I hope you enjoyed this. And if you want to hear my reactions, my carry-out order from this conversation, make sure you join us on our Patreon community, where you also get some amazing perks, as well as some awesome content, organized things, and even conferences about the pro-life movement and ways that you can defend the faith. And I certainly hope you enjoyed this interview. I certainly did, and I want you to continue to experience faith, culture, and commentary, and more importantly, stay hungry for God.